My dad was a compulsive gambler, and so much so that he was profiled on 60 Minutes not once, but twice. First time in 1976, and they actually did a follow-up in 1986. Well, to understand my dad, you'd have to know a little bit about my dad. My dad's name was Irving North, grew up in Brooklyn, New York. He was a degenerate compulsive gambler. He never had a legitimate job until very late in life, where he actually drove a cab in Vegas and spent a lot of time in and out of prison, got arrested quite a bit. We spent most of my younger days always somewhere on the run. So I was in no less than 10 different schools before I was in the 11th grade, possibly in 3 or 4 different states, because he was always running from someone, either running from the local authorities, federal authorities, bookmakers, Shylocks. You know, when the well ran dry, you know, he was out the door, and we followed him. I mean, we were, you know, he was still my dad, and that's the only life I knew growing up as a kid.
What are the good things you learned from your father?
Well, you know, it's interesting because, you know, by society's perspective, my dad wasn't good. He wasn't a good father. He wasn't a good husband. He wasn't a good friend. He wasn't a good Samaritan. But he did love me. And I spent an inordinate amount of time with my dad. So much time that family and friends were so worried that he would have so much influence on me that I would become like him. But the reality is, during those travel trips and going to the racetracks with him, and he took me everywhere, literally everywhere. He'd take me out of school to take me with him. But he knew that what life and path he chose maybe wasn't the right path, but he wanted good for me. He didn't want me to be like him. So he would try to give me life's lessons on how to behave and how to survive. And the one thing he wanted so badly, because he was worried, because I was a really nice, soft, gentle kind of kid, which scared him, because he thought that I wouldn't survive in his world and I was destined for his world. So he wanted me to be street savvy, wanted me to have street smarts, as he put it. And I feel like in some odd way I did acquire that. And if I did acquire it, I acquired it from him.
Do you remember him ever saying, "I love you," or "I'm proud of you"?
All the time. See, in spite of my dad growing up without a father, I can't explain it. Maybe I was just lovable, because I got a lot of affection from my dad. In the eye of a tornado or storm, so to speak, in which we grew up in because of him, man, I was always reminded of love. And I would say that in my dad's case, maybe not in everybody's case that grew up similarly, but for sure in my father's case, in the early stages, a lot of love made up for a lot of bad parenting.
How do you think that relationship, that close relationship with your father, shaped you as a young man?
Well, it was important because I had so much love from both parents, but even from my dad. I think that he saw something in me. I think what my father believed is that he couldn't be all that bad to have had such a good kid. And this would be more his words than mine. I don't know how good of a kid I was, but certainly to him, in his eyes, when I was little, he saw that, hey, judge me how you want, but that's mine. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I think that's good. What are the bad things you learned from your father?
Well, a lot. You know, the bad things is I learned that one place I never want to end up is in prison. Never want to end up in jail. I learned that there's no right way to do a wrong thing. I think that my father's intentions were usually probably pretty good, but the way he went about them were always bad. And no matter how hard he tried to do something good the wrong way, it always failed.
Is there something that you wish your dad would have told you but never did?
No, I mean, I was told that I was loved quite a bit, so there was no question there. I just, I can't think of anything that, we had a lot of communication even towards the end of his life. So we weren't short on words with each other. Sometimes they weren't always the words each of us wanted to hear, but I don't think that anything was left out. Sometimes I wish things were left out, but they really weren't.
Is there anything that you wished he would have showed you? For example, my growing up, without the father, it was, man, I wished he would have been around to show me how to fish, how to hunt, how to fix a car, how to do some of that stuff. And that was part of why I think I was, even to this day, I get frustrated as a father and a husband that when my water heater breaks, I can't just go over there and fix it because I don't know how. Is there anything that you wished he would have showed you but he didn't?
Well, my father was what we refer to as a New York hillbilly. My dad never learned how to ride a bike. My dad didn't even know how to swim. There was a lot he couldn't do, I can tell you that. I wish that my father could have loved his children more than his love of gambling. Because no matter how much he maybe did love us or said he loved us, obviously his addiction to gambling meant more to him. And I would imagine there's other people that could relate to that addictive behavior, be it alcohol, drugs, gambling, or whatever addictive behavior there is in their family, that it just was the most important thing in his life, was getting another dollar to make another bet. And I wish that he could have seen things a little differently, because I think that things could have been a little bit differently.
So the example that your dad set as a husband, as a father, how has that impacted your life?
Well, I don't know how much my dad's behavior, because, from the time I was 16 to the time I was in my 20s, and a lot of time in between, he was in prison. But he was not a good husband. In fact, he might have been the worst kind of husband, because he was verbally abusive and at times physically abusive. And I think it has a dramatic effect on you when your parents are in that kind of environment. And there were some deep, deep wounds, maybe even some that still need healing. I don't know, you never know. But I thank God that I didn't inherit that characteristic, because you often hear that it carries over and that's the only example you saw. And I'm just happy that I'm not that guy.
Was there a time that you came to understand this impact of growing up with an absent father?
Well, you have to understand, because I spent so much time with my dad, even during the chaos, and he did love me. There's no question about it, that he had a lot of love for me. It was real, real hard. The hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life was know that I was going to leave with my mother and my brothers at age 16 and not tell him where we were going for a long time, because I knew it was going to break his heart. But I knew that it had to be done. So sometimes in life, I guess, sometimes in life, the right decision happens to be the most difficult decision. And I can easily look back and without any hesitation to know that that was the right decision at the time. And I knew in time that we would be able to communicate again, and we did.
What's the most memorable experience you had with your dad?
The most memorable experience I've had with my father, because I did have a lot of them, and some are crazy, wild stories, and some are painful, and some are really emotional, and it would depend on what day you asked me that. But right now at this moment, the one thing that really stands out in my head is I remember it was a few months after I had went and gotten my dad, after he had cancer had spread to his bones, and he was in pretty bad shape at the time where hospice is coming to the house. And I was there, and I remember being in the mirror, and I was putting on his shave cream, and I was shaving him, And he would just look in the mirror, and I remember him looking back at me with a gentleness, almost that he was the child and I was the man, and just shaving his face. And it was a real sort of a sweet, tender moment of being there to do that, because I knew how much he liked to be clean and be clean shaven. And so those were really tender moments. So what I've chosen to remember about my dad are really the pleasantries, I would call it.
Was there a funny moment that you can recall with your dad?
My father, one of the really, I would say something that I learned from my dad is that you can have a sense of humor even in the worst of times. I mean, I remember one of the Thanksgiving that sticks out in my mind is we had no money. There was no turkey, there was no dressing, there was no potato salad. There was $6. And I was maybe 7 years old. So what does my dad do with $6? He buys as much candy as $6 can buy, because he knows that a kid would like candy. And that was our Thanksgiving. One year, they were somewhere, I was just a little boy, and I guess if you made the robot laugh, you won a prize, and they needed the money. It was maybe even a turkey. And I love my mom telling this story, because she said everybody was laughing so hard, and she laughed so hard she literally peed, but the robot didn't laugh. So everyone else laughed. Irv had a sense of humor. He was a funny guy. I mean, even when he was sick and they had to stick that needle in him to see if he had a morphine overdose or if he was actually dead, and they stick it in him, and for 10 seconds, it takes the morphine effect away. And he just pops up and he looks around with this thick New York accent. He goes, "Who the heck are you and where the heck am I?" In not so many words, and drops right back down. I mean, he just was a character. Irv North was a character to all those that knew him. And I will tell you, if there is a Irv lesson that I learned, and that even when we talk about him today, and he's been deceased for almost 20 years, he was funny, man. He was a funny guy. He had a sense of humor, even in prison. The people that knew him in prison, from the warden down to the guards, down to the people that were his cellmates, would talk about him because he left an impression. Because I would say this, Irv was also very intelligent. He had a 7th grade education, but extremely high IQ. Part of that IQ gave him wit. So he had wit. So I'd like to think that I have some of that, maybe not the high IQ, but certainly the wit part. And also, too, the ability to laugh at times where you think that your life is completely over, it's shot, you have nothing left, and you feel like the world's coming to an end, is where you need to have a sense of humor. You need to know that it's not as bad as you think it is. And I think that's the other thing, that I've been through my ups and downs. We all go through them. We all have peaks and valleys, business, professional, personal. And because Irv was always up and down, and he'd have a big wad of cash one day, be flat broke the next, we'd be evicted one day, and we'd be in a new apartment the next, is that you roll with the punches, so to speak. There was a famous doctor named Dr. Custer that wrote a book on gambling. And he labeled my father the worst amongst the bad breed, an incurable, someone that would never stop gambling. I think with Irv, Irv was just, I think if he knew a better way, he might have chosen a better way. But certainly with Irv, life wasn't dull. Let's put it that way. It wasn't a dull life, that's for sure.
What do you wish your dad would have done differently?
Oh man, there's so many things I wish he would have done differently. I wish he would have gotten it. I wish he would have understood. It seemed like he was chasing this non-existent dream, because he always wanted money, but the minute he got it, he blew it. I wish that he had bought a house. I wish he had bought a car. I wish he had bought something. I mean, instead of selling all our furniture just to make another buck, just to gamble with. I always wondered what he really thought of me. I think most men really want to know deeply, you know, what their fathers really think of them. And even though I knew he loved me, I didn't know if he got me, because he never understood it. You know, a lot of times you're in business, doesn't mean that you have, you know, 2 million in liquidity. You know, and he didn't understand that. You know, it's like, Dad, I wouldn't have given him money anyway. In fact, how I gave him money was I would wire money to pay his rent. Or I would, if he said he needed clothes, I'd get him an article of clothing, but I wouldn't let him know where I got it, because he would return it to get the money back. So I knew all his little tricks. And so I knew that he loved me, but I didn't know if he sort of knew what I'm trying to do. And I've accomplished a few things, especially considering where I came from. And one day, one of my closest friends, I mean, he's like a brother to me. The woman he ended up marrying, she knew me way before she even knew him. But I didn't know that they were even together at the time they got together. She was a model, and she went on a bachelorette trip to Las Vegas. And they jump in this guy's cab. And I'll get emotional on this one. And it's 4 beautiful women in my dad's cab. And he's like, yeah, where you from? They say Dallas. Ah, my kid's from Dallas, Larry North. You know Larry? And Tyler did. What are the odds? Tyler knew me, and this is early 90s. I'd been doing some radio, but certainly wasn't a household name. And Tyler goes, I know Larry really well. He goes, really? That's my kid. She said he pulled out a notebook that had press clippings and all this stuff on me. And then he flips the visor down, and there's all these pictures of me. And she says, Larry, she goes, he glowed. He was obviously so proud of you. And it's not that I didn't know he was proud of me. Here he is driving a cab, and we weren't even speaking to each other. So it's one of those things. It's not bad tears, it's just, you know, emotional, because I think about him. I still love him.
If you could say one thing to your father right now, what would it be?
Well, I talk to him a lot anyway. You know, I always, he pops up in my head more than he really should. You know, I think if knowing my dad, he'd probably look at my fiance and said, "Son, you did good," you know. But you know, I don't know what I'd say to my dad. I just, you know, I think about it. I wish that I could do some simple things with my dad, like just take him to go, you know, eat his favorite food, or just have a normal conversation with him. It seems like ever since I can remember him, there was always something chaotic going on in our lives. There was never that, let's just go to Starbucks and chill. You know, let's just have a simple talk. So I wish if I could do one thing with my dad, it'd be just sit down and just have a normal, light conversation with him. My dad and I had some really serious confrontations, primarily because he had been abusive to my mother, and then when I was old enough and strong enough and man enough to put a stop to that, even though they were long separated and divorced, he still could be a threat. And he ended up in Vegas, and we were never as close as we were when I was younger, and I think that bothered him. It's like, you were my kid, you were my little Larry. What happened? Well, what happened is I grew up, and I started to think things differently. And his attitude was always, well, hey, I never did anything to you. You know, I maybe hurt other people, I maybe did other things, but I never hurt you, Larry. Well, yeah, you did, because you hurt people that I love and care about, which affected me. And then I had to draw a line in the sand. And so having said that, though, I did make a choice. And I made a choice that was rather simple. As he was dying, I knew he was alone, and I knew he was broke. So I went and got him. My brothers agreed this was the right thing to do, and I did nurse him. And I remember getting a call from the VA hospital. I was friends with one of the nurses there, and I said, just, you know, let me know what's going on at all times. And she called me, and she said, you know, you better get down here. I don't think you're going to have another chance to say goodbye to your dad. So I immediately hustled down to, by the time I got my brothers and my mom, and my mom was really helpful at that time. And I get to the hospital bed and my dad is completely passed out. And I grabbed his hand. I knew I needed to say it then, and I couldn't even repeat the words that I said. I just know that it was full of love and forgiveness and wishing him the best. And when I turned around, the nurse had walked into the room while I was talking to my dad, and she was just full of tears. And she said, I just didn't want to interrupt you to tell you that he passed away an hour earlier. And I said, you know what? I didn't do that for him. I did that for me, and I did. It was important for me to truly forgive him in my heart. It's the best thing I've ever done. And even reflect back on that day, I remember it like it's yesterday, and it was really easy to forgive him when I made that decision to. And so I hope that he knows that I did, but more importantly, I know I did. Forgiveness is a very personal thing. I would never feel like I could tell someone who they need to forgive, because there very well could have been some very heinous things in that person's life, and where they are at that moment, they're not prepared to forgive them. I do know this though. I know that I would never have come close to having the current relationships I have, the business, the opportunities, the ability to help and heal others like I do now, had I not forgiven my dad. If I had chosen to hold on to that anger and that frustration, things would have turned out a lot differently. And I think that the forgiving process is continual. You just constantly got to remind yourself that, hey, I'm letting go of that. I'm forgiving him. I love him. And even in spite of all the things he might have done that weren't good, he did do some good things.
How do you think your relationship with your father has influenced your life and made you the man that you are today?
I don't know how much credit I would give my father for who I am right now, but certainly there's a part of him that's in me. There's no question. I even sometimes do a double take in the mirror, or did I just say that because it sounds so much like him? The one thing that my dad was growing up on the streets is he was a pretty tough guy. Not the kind of toughness that I aspired to be, but tough nonetheless. So I think that certainly by him giving me a little bit of that streetwise, in spite of being a little soft, gentle child, I grew up a little bit more street smart and savvy than he would have probably thought I would have, but would have been proud that I did.
If you had a friend who was going to be a father for the first time, what advice would you give him?
Here's the advice I'd give any expecting father, maybe even a current father. Kids, they're smart. They don't forget. Just like the dad that says, honey, I'll take you on my next business trip. The next one, you get to go with daddy. And she's got her little suitcase packed and she's by the door and dad's already left because he couldn't take her. Or you tell your kid, I'll be at that soccer game, and kid's looking around the whole day and you don't show up. Is what's real important, I think, as a father is you gotta be careful with your words. The road to hell is paved with the best intentions, they say. And just because you think you're doing the right thing or say all the right things, be careful with your words. Be physical. Hug and kiss your kids every night. If you could kiss them and love them and tell them you love them and be verbal and don't hold anything back, and let them know right from the get-go, they're smart, they're strong, they're good. Positive affirmation. Irv was told he was bad, was told he'd end up in prison, was told he was no good. And guess what? He ended up in prison and he believed he was no good. So I think that the key is that you are that inspiration. No one inspires a child more than a father. So be that inspiration. Do the right thing.
There's a quote by Tony Dungy from the Indianapolis Colts. And he says, we have a whole generation of men who don't really understand how much they mean to their kids. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that that's probably true. That fathers don't realize how much their kids idolize them. If you ask any kid, you know, who's your hero? It's not Spider-Man or Superman, it's Dad. It doesn't matter what Dad does. Dad could be a bricklayer, Dad could be a CEO, Dad could be a garbage man. It doesn't matter. That no one does better than their dad. You know, I have a young little nephew that got kicked out of elementary school. Didn't really get kicked out. He got called up. His parents got called because he loves his Uncle Larry so much. His Uncle Larry, thinks I'm a cartoon character, thinks these muscles are made of steel. And the kids were arguing who could beat up who, Superman or Batman, and he throws his Uncle Larry into the mix, but was so passionate. He goes, Uncle Larry could beat up Superman. And they got into like a little fight. He's a kid in kindergarten. Well, your kids, you're their Superman. You are their Superman. It doesn't matter if Dad is athletic, if Dad's skinny, if Dad's never thrown a football in his life. You're the hero. So you have to wear that hero role, but I don't think all the fathers realize it. So in essence, if I'm right, and Tony Dungy's right by his comment, then we have a lot of heroes in our world, you know, but they have to act like it. You know, I think fatherhood is not about perfection. It's probably about just making progress. And I guess it's never too late to make up. I know people in their 40s and 50s and 60s that are still going through dad issues, and it's okay for their dad to speak up, show a tear, tell their kid they love them, give them a hug, send them a phone call, message, something, do something. It's just never too late. And I think that the favorite thing for a father from his kids, and maybe the favorite thing from a kid's to the father, is not any, you know, iPad or any Game Boy or any flat screen TV or even a Ferrari. I think TIME, time, is the best gift that you could give each other.
Watch the Father Effect movie for free on YouTube.